Hello again, and welcome back to the Litmosphere. This is Jennifer with another book review. So, as I stated in my previous video, I'm falling way behind, and I'm kind of just doing these back to back. This book I'm going to jump right into is The Cellist of Sarajevo by Stephen Galloway. This is a reread. I've read this book years ago, I believe, when it first came out. And I ended up talking about it at one of my book club meetings and wanted to reread it because the only thing that really stayed with me was this one scene. And anytime I think about my favorite book that I've ever read, this is one that comes up not because I love the book. I honestly can't remember at all what had happened in the book, but because of this scene, it always leaves me hopeful and melancholy at the same time. So I thought, why not reread this book and see what actually happened to lead to this scene and what I had thought was the ending of the book. This is a book about the raid on Sarajevo. I believe it was in the 90s. I would have to fact check that. So this is told from the point of view of three or four characters. There's Arrow, who is a sniper. She's a young girl who's a sniper. She was taken right out of training school, I believe it was, and drafted into the military to help defend Sarajevo. Her task throughout the book, as we go along, is to protect the cellist. He has been targeted to be assassinated by the rebels that are raiding Sarajevo because of his kind of beacon of hope that he's providing. So her task is to keep him alive. The second character is Keenan, and he is a man with a family. He lives in an apartment building, and the primary of his story is that he fetches water every few days. So we see him on his trek to go during this book and fetch water. So he also fetches water for his downstairs neighbor, which he really begrudges the fact that he has to go do this. He is very angry that she provides the wrong kind of bottles, that she's ungrateful for his contribution to helping her out, but he's going to do it nonetheless because he did make promises when the raids started happening that he would help her out, that the entire community of their apartment block would help her out. She's a survivor from, I believe, World War II, and is living there single by herself. The third character is Dragan, I believe his name is pronounced, and he's a baker who is paid in bread. So he goes to work every day so that he can get bread. His wife and child are gone. They smuggled out of Sarajevo when the raids first started happening, and he believes they live in Rome. He's not entirely sure. He hasn't heard from them since they left. So he's currently living with his sister and brother-in-law, whom he does not get along with. And his contribution to the household is bread. And so his part in the story is his commute to work and the difficulties of trying to get to work. And along this particular day, he meets an old friend from the years before the raids, where everything was, I guess, regular life. And the last character that we know of, but we don't really see other than the beginning, his point of view, is the cellist. And the cellist is a man who is a trained cellist. He played, I believe, in the orchestra in Sarajevo. And one day, nearby where he lived, there was a group of 22 people lined up for bread, and they were bombed. I think they call them shells were thrown at them, and all 22 died. So the cellist has decided that for 22 days he will go out and play a certain piece of music. This has kind of become a beacon of hope for the people of Sarajevo, that in this tragedy there is still beauty and respect, pain of grace, I guess, to these people that lost their lives just for food. That's primarily the basis of this story, is these three characters and their contribution to the days and their families. I will say that not a lot of action happens, nor a lot of dialogue. A lot of the book is the introspection of these characters on their lives, how they've changed, how their lives used to be, things they remember from before and in comparison to now. We do get a lot of how easy it was to go get water, how electricity is now being, taken for granted. You might only get it for an hour, you might get it for 4 hours, and you never know when you're going to get electricity. Water is every 3 to 4 days a trip across treacherous streets where you never know if you're going to be hit by a sniper or shelled while you're crossing the street to get to the well, they call it the brewery where the water comes from. At first, this book seemed to kind of drag, and I was a little unsure of where this was going because I couldn't remember this book being quite to that style, and I was kind of expecting a bit more. But as I continued on and I started getting to the scene that I had recalled in my head, I remember how much I love this book. This book grapples a lot with how war can change us, how war can change who we are, what our beliefs are, our decisions on what we'll do just to survive, and how much we're willing to turn a blind eye to and what we're willing to fight for. I've never been, of course, in a war, so I have never had to make these decisions, and I hope to God I never have to make these decisions. But it really, really thoroughly highlighted how these people thought. Like, these were well told stories of how these people's lives have changed, why they do the things they do, why it means so much to them. I mean, this gentleman is going to get, Keenan is going to get water every 3 days, and he goes down, and every day when he walks out that door, he sits down on the steps and he cries, and he doesn't want his children to see him crying. He goes and gets the bottles from his downstairs neighbor, and every time he hesitates to knock on her door. He does not want to do this chore for her, and he always wonders, why am I still doing this? I've broken promises. I don't know why I still do this. She can fetch her own water. She can't give me the proper bottles. It kind of brings out the anger in him that he's still doing this, and she gives no recognition. She gives no congratulations or a thank you or anything to him. In fact, more often than not, snaps at him. And then you have Dragan, who every day goes to work. He lives with a man who hates him, and his family has gone away. His wife is gone, his child is gone, and he remembers the days of before when they used to do things together, and he wonders what has happened to them and never hears from them. And his contribution to this family is, bringing in bread, how every day he still goes out and does it. He could run away, he could leave, but he chooses to stay, and he chooses to repeatedly bring this bread back, despite the hazards of even going to work. The scenes in this story are very well described on how hazardous it is to cross a street, how the people would huddle together as they decide, is it safe to make a run for it? Because there was very little walking. There were snipers up in the hills, and they would be hidden and peg people off one by one, no matter where they were, without warning, without any reason behind it. Like, these were people who were just trying to cross a street, and it was more often than not that halfway through the street, a person would just fall and they had been shot. So a lot of this a lot of the story wasn't so much action as it was descriptions of the life these people were leading. The only major action was from the character Arrow, who was herself a sniper and was reputed to be a very good sniper. She had a very good reputation amongst people. She was whispered about. Everybody wanted to, on the enemy side, take her down. And we get to see from her point of view how becoming a sniper has affected her, how her anger towards the rebels, the monsters in the mountain, in the hills, have changed her, how her reasonings for being a sniper, how she kind of combines who she was and who she is, and the lines she won't cross while doing her job. She wants to destroy these people who have caused her to hate. She is a character who never wanted to hate, who never wanted to be angry, and yet, because of the circumstances of the life that has happened, she now feels hatred, and she's angry that she feels hatred. And so you see her struggles and grasping for finding herself amongst all this fighting and warring. This is a very beautiful book. It is a slower paced book, and it's not, like I said, not until the very end of the story. There's not a whole lot of action per se that's going on. There are certain scenes where where they're running or they're hiding or there's some shelling or some shooting going on. But overall, this book is a lot of just introspection amongst the characters, from different variety of people, on how they're handling and how things have changed and how they saw their old Sarajevo versus what it is now and what they hope it can become, and how they can be the people they need to be to help it become what it needs to become. It's truly, truly just a beautiful story to read. It's very heartwarming to see these characters and how they've evolved and how their lives have changed and how they are still fighting for a better life. I highly do recommend this book to read, but in knowing that it's a different sort of book, almost like a type of a memoir style book, I found it to be. Nevertheless, thoroughly entertaining. You wanted to see how these people were changing and how their thoughts were changing and what the cellist was doing for people. At that point in time during the ratings, it felt almost like the descriptions these people were giving up and becoming ghosts of themselves, and Sarajevo itself was becoming a ghost of what it used to be. And when this cellist took up this mantle of playing these 22 days, it brought hope back to people, and it was so riveting to read, and how he stepped out every day knowing that any moment in time he could die, and yet he was not going to stop until the 22 days were up. Like I said, I don't have anything bad to say about this story. The only thing I will note is the controversy on this story, and this may or may not stop some people from reading it. I personally would tell you, don't let it stop you, but maybe do some further on research. But the Cellist of Sarajevo is an actual person. I did not know that. He was an actual man. He did not play for the 22 days. He played all over the place in Sarajevo, and the description of the man given in the book is a description of the actual Cellist of Sarajevo. I don't have his name written down here, but he is an actual man, so I recommend Googling it and looking him up and reading his story. He did hear about the book. I'm not sure if he read it, but he did hear about the book, and he demanded reparations for it because they used his name to sell this book. Sorry, not his name, but his story to sell the book. And he felt that that kind of went against what he was and who he was. So take that for what you want it to be, but the book itself is still worth reading for the characters. The controversy surrounding, I guess, that character itself, especially considering that's the title of the book, is entirely up to the reader's perspective of whether that would stop them from reading it or not, just because, again, the gentleman in question, the cellist, was quite displeased by the story being written and having his tribute to Sarajevo being taken into a media, like writing a book to sell for money. I'm still not sure what to think about it, but the book was already read by the time I found out about this, and I'm not regretting 1 minute reading that book. The scene that I remember in my head from previous years in my life is still as beautiful as it was and will always be as beautiful, although I did find out that was not the last chapter of the book that I had thought it was. I thoroughly enjoy this book. I think I will always enjoy this book, and I think it is one book that should be read far and wide. That's it for this review. Leave a comment if you've read the book and tell me what you thought. I will see you later. Bye.